Good to have you here, Governor. Appreciate it.
Glad to be here.
So we had a Fox News voter analysis in which we asked the question about laws banning transgender procedures on minors. Found the country's pretty split on this. Strongly favor or somewhat favor, 33%, 14%. Somewhat oppose or strongly oppose, 19% and 32%. So the country's pretty evenly divided. Why do you believe it's important for this law to be upheld?
It's a very serious subject. It's one that's not political to me. It's really, it's not about right versus left. It's really about reasonable versus radical, or at the very least, reasonable versus real risk. I mean, it's become increasingly clear in this country and across the world that we really should not be performing life-altering, permanent procedures on children that have such enormous implications for their life. And we've seen countries across the world change their view on this and ban these procedures in Europe and in 20 states in America. So it really is about the protection of children and the fundamental responsibility we have to protect kids.
You brought up Europe. Proponents of gender transition surgeries for minors used to say, well, look at Europe. They're way ahead of us on this. They know what they're doing. But as you pointed out, Europe has really turned about face on this. Dr. Hilary Cass led a landmark report called the Cass Report, which said in part, quote, there remains diversity of opinion as to how best to treat these children and young people. The evidence is weak. And clinicians have told us they are unable to determine with any certainty which children and young people will go on to have an enduring trans identity. And this from the National Health Service in the UK. We have concluded that there is not enough evidence to support the safety or clinical effectiveness of puberty-suppressing hormones to make the treatment routinely available at this time. So as you point out, Europe's looking at the science here, and Europe's saying, whoa, put the brakes on, we're going too fast. In America, there are some people who say, and we're going to be talking to one of them next hour, Jamie Reed, a whistleblower, who says this is not about science. This is about advocacy and activism.
Well, the evidence for benefit is very weak, and the evidence for harm is increasingly becoming very real. And we've seen that. You'll see it more and more with young people who have been through these procedures, and then their families have deep regret for going through them. I think where we are, we're in a position in this country where the science is showing that this is not something that we should be experimenting with, as it were, for children. There is no historical evidence that this is a benefit for kids. And that's the very reason why our Attorney General presented the argument before the Supreme Court today, and why we believe that states should have the deciding factor, that the people should be able to decide through their elected officials where they stand on this really important and very serious issue.
So the opposition in this isn't really talking about this in terms of medical procedure. They're talking about it in terms of constitutionality. And this being sex discrimination. Here's what the ACLU lawyer Chase Stragio said about this. This is a law that bans medical treatment only when it is prescribed inconsistent with an individual's sex. Our argument is that it treats people differently because of their sex, and therefore the court has to treat it like all other forms of sex discrimination, and that's why it's unconstitutional. What do you say to that argument?
And the argument in the Tennessee case is that this is not at all about discrimination based on sex. This is a law based on purpose, the purpose for these treatments. And the purpose is no different whether it is a male or a female. And that was part of the argument today, was this is not an issue that should be decided by the court based on its constitutionality, because it doesn't discriminate based on sex.
Yep.
This is an issue on purpose, and that's why it is an issue that should be determined by states through the legislative process, and not an issue for the Supreme Court to take up. That's why the Sixth Circuit upheld our law, and then it was challenged to the Supreme Court.
All right, well, we'll see what happens when the Supreme Court considers it and comes out with a decision. We're not going to know for a number of weeks. Governor, it's good to meet you in person.
Thank you, sir.
We've seen you in a little box before. So
glad to be here.
Welcome to Washington.
Thank you, sir.
I know you're heading back home to the great state of Tennessee.
I'll be back in Tennessee soon.
All right, we'll see you there.
Thank you.